Good evening.
Thank you. Welcome to the Troy City Council Special Budget Study Session for April 16, 2018. I will call that meeting to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham. Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick. Here. Councilmember Pennington.
Here.
We will deal with the excused absence of Mayor Pro Tem Abraham at the next City Council meeting. We have one discussion item this evening, that is the proposed fiscal year 2018-19 annual budget and three-year budget. The overall overview of that budget will consist of capital projects, enterprise funds, and the three-year budget. And I would just like to point out that the budget is available for review at the city clerk's office, the Troy Public Library, and on the city's website, www.troymi.gov/budget. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Miller, and we're anxiously awaiting the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. We'd like to have three quick comments before we get rolling in. I want to just say that developing a budget is a huge process. Tom starts in December, and then after he gets done with this, he starts working on audit, and it's just a vicious cycle after that for him. I also would like to recognize everyone in the room, probably every staff person worked on the budget at some level. And then to finish it up, Tom, Beth isn't here, and Stephanie helped with the presentation. I'd just like to thank all the staff. And so this evening basically is a large data dump, and we will provide a lot of information for you. And so we'll go through the agenda. Initially, I'll go through the strategies, and then we have an all funds summary by Tom, and then Nino our assessor will talk a little about the Headley Amendment Proposal A. And then we'll go back to the general fund summary where Tom will take the lead in that, and I'll jump in and provide a few comments. And then we go to the Department of Public Works where Kurt Bovensee, Public Works Director, will speak. Then the Police Department, Chief Mayer, and the Fire Department, Chief Roberts, and the Recreation Department, Elaine Bowe, the Director. And then we'll go over the agenda for April 19th, and then we'll get into questions. But before I get going, are there any questions? Nope. So we'll get going. These are our strategies as adopted by City Council, and what we did here is we put the strategies up, and then we put what's corresponding in the budget, how we're trying to accomplish these strategies. The first one is to evaluate and determine a plan to address the Civic Center property and continue to provide information to the public. And we budgeted $10,000, and we've determined that how that will be spent will be determined by the city manager when appointed. 2, create a 360-degree marketing brand solutions to further engage the public. We have in our city manager's budget a promotions fund, and it's $52,000 in this budget, and that will also be determined by the city manager when they are appointed. 3, beautify with flowers and public art, and to continue to enhance city amenities, including trails and pathways, farmers market, Troy Public Library, Big Beaver Corridor, Troy Transit Center, and Troy Community Center. We have $750,000 in trails and pathways, which is under construction now. We have a farmers market, which is going to start in June, correct, Cindy?
June 1st.
June 1st. We have $345,000 in the library capital improvements fund. We are operating a Big Beaver Corridor shuttle service, and we provide staff to do that. And then in the community center, we are going to be doing painting and pool bar site replacement. The fourth strategy is examine placemaking opportunities through development policies. And this will be accomplished through the planning director and economic development specialist. No additional funds were allocated for that. Number 5, continue to focus on the city's infrastructure through funding capital. And that will be done through the capital fund, which we'll get into greater detail. And I apologize, Mayor, we're going to address that on Thursday night, not this evening. I apologize if that's in there. 6, invest in innovative public servants who are leaders in trust, inclusiveness, creativity, and kindness. We're going to accomplish this by having funding available to employees for tuition reimbursement, education, and training. And we're also in process of selecting a firm to do a pay and class study. And finally, sexual harassment training. Number 7, evaluate staffing and service levels to invest in organizational resources for efficiencies and proactive public engagement. This is determined by the city manager when appointed. Number 8, identify methods to attract investors to create an innovative entertainment district along the Maple Corridor. And no additional funds were allocated to accomplish this. This can be done through existing tools for corridors, and what we'll do is investigate that and report back to council, and that will be done with the economic development specialist. Number 9, recruit, retain employees by creating career advancement and development opportunities for both full-time and part-time employees. What we're going to do is identify persons for management and provide money for education and training within existing budgets. Number 10 is reimagine the Citizens Academy, and Cindy Stewart, Community Affairs Director, will retool that, and so there is no additional funding specifically set aside for that. Number 11, strengthen relationships with Troy-based nonprofits and organizations. We're going to continue our work with the coalition, school district, and $50,000 additional this year for Mediville. And finally, number 12, provide high-quality police services that reduce crime, collaborate with the community, and safely respond to critical incidents. And we consider this normal operations in our police department, but we are providing in-car computers, and we're studying to do gun range improvements and have provided funding in this budget to do that. Those are the strategies, and this is how we're planning to attack them in this upcoming fiscal year. So we're going to turn it over to all funds, and Mr. Darling.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Good evening. So we're going to start off with kind of a big picture, right? The citywide. This includes all the funds, general fund, all of our enterprise funds, capital, refuse. Looking at the big pie, if you will. And so you can see total overall, we're looking at revenue citywide around $138 million. As we can see from the chart here, though, the majority of our revenues come from tax revenues of about 51 million or 37%, and charges for services at about 35 or 36% or about 50.1 million. Really quick, the details of the citywide thing can be found on page 34 of your budget, and this graph can be found on page 20. Now, don't term your pages. You might just want to note it for further reference if you want. Otherwise, I'll have you all through this budget from one side to the other. Okay, so again, tax revenues are pretty self-explanatory what they are. Charges for services are the 50.5 million citywide. The majority of that's for our water and service charges for services, which accounts for about 34 million of that. Good, next.
Sorry.
So let's go ahead and dig down then, peel the onion back, if you will, about tax revenues. Again, this is anything new. How do we come with tax revenue? Well, basically it's taxable value times the millage rate divided by 1,000. That's how you come up with individual tax revenues. So let's go ahead and look at these two major components, the drivers of taxable value and the driver of the millage rate. So let's go ahead and look at taxable value. We've seen this well before. We started out, we're budgeting about $4.9 billion, okay, of taxable value for 2019. And again, we've seen back here, you know, in the Great Recession, the high in 2009 was about $5.6 billion to a low in 2014 of about $4.3 billion, or a loss of about $1.3 billion. Okay, in taxable value, which is about a 23% decline, which I think in the general fund was around $11 million. I'd have to go back and check that, but it was a significant amount. So you can see it's a slow climb back that we've talked about based on, again, the taxable values and the limitations of Headley and Proposal A. You do have this as a graph, as a line graph on page 20. This is kind of hard to show, but really what I want to point out here is that residential growth, you know, since around 2015, it's been about 3.5%. What's new for this year, and it's hard to see here, is that we're finally getting some growth in our commercial and industrial. It's been flat to non-existent in the past years. In fact, personal properties had still been going down. So now it's stabilized, and we're actually seeing about a 4.3% increase in our commercial and residential. So finally, again, you know, the growth in residential is being held back total entity-wide by the stagnant growth or decline in our commercial and industrial. So that's good news, is that, again, that our personal and commercial is starting to pick up. So overall, for 2019, we're looking at an increase in tax value around 4%, or about 190 million. Next. Okay, so that's taxable value. Next in the equation was millage rates. So here's our 2019 proposed millage rates. And again, you can see this on page 16 in your budget. The total millage proposed for 2019 is 10.2965 mils. Although management didn't propose any change in the millage, the Helly amendment made us roll back some of the millages in our capital projects fund from 1.4949 to 1.4381, along with the millage in our library fund from 0.6934 to 0.6884, which again is well below the 0.7 that was approved during the vote. Should also be noted on here that in 2021, we're proposing, or at least we're projecting anyway, that we can decrease the debt millage from a 0.6 mils to a 0.4 mil as we go into that last year of our debt service payments for proposal A, B, and C. Okay, so with that being said, to shed more light on the Headley Amendment and Proposal A, I'd like to bring up our excellent City Assessor, Nino Licari.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah,
thank you, sir. I'm assuming, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm assuming that you got a chance to read that email. I hope it didn't put you to sleep. I'm going to try and skim over this Headley stuff a little bit. I'm hoping that you have a little bit of an understanding on it. Headley was adopted in 1978. Consequently, taxation in Michigan changed dramatically. It was supposed to mainly affect revenues to the state of Michigan. Implementation language went far beyond that and started affecting all of the taxing jurisdictions within the entire state, local taxing jurisdictions. What it does is it limits the amount of revenue that you can generate from increases in taxable value since 1994, assessed value prior to that, to new construction plus inflation. So back in the day when your assessment could increase 10% and your taxes would increase 10%, Headley would force the millage rate down so the community itself didn't gain any revenue other than what the inflation rate was for that point in time. Since 1994, Headley is applied to taxable value. And what it does is it creates a factor that they levy against the millage rate. Tom showed you there where we lost some money in the library fund and the capital fund. Our Headley rate, I think, is projected to be 0.9929. We've had Headley factors for the last 4 years now, so our millage rate has gradually decreased. The allowable rate that we can levy has been decreased by Headley. The thing with Headley is the factor can't be higher than 1. If you do a study of the Headley calculations since 1978, and if it were allowed to be over 1, we'd be levying about 14 mills right now. And by charter, we could have only levied 10 at that point in time. But since it can't go above 1, it means your millage rate either stays the same or it goes down. It never goes back up unless you have a vote. It requires a vote of the people. It's called a Headley divide. In a declining market like this last recession we had, the Headley factor is always 1. The actual calculation at one point in time was 1.12, so a 12% increase. But it doesn't work that way. You only get the 1. So the millage rate stayed the same. Headley also did some other things that helped local government. It controls unfunded mandates from the state. At one point in time, the state said that the local assessing unit had to handle all the principal residence exemptions for no charge. So the first year after that, someone sued them and they sent us a check. From that point forward, since we already had the bulk of them, we had to handle them for no charge. But it does all kinds of things like that. It sets a constitutional formula for state shared revenue. There's 2 formulas for state shared revenue, constitutional and legislative. When state shared revenue goes down, it's because the legislative formula changes, not the constitutional one. The constitutional one is set in Headley and it does not change. I think we could pop to the next slide because what's important to know now, you have Proposal A from 1994, created a new value, taxable value. It's capped. Can only go up by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever one's lower. Since 1994, the CPI has averaged 2.3%. So you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, new is exempt from the cap, just like new is exempt under Headley. So all the new construction, you get to levy your millage rate against because you have to service that new construction. Somebody puts up a 20-story office building, police, fire, water, sewer, all that stuff costs you money. So new is exempt from the cap on Headley, new is exempt from the cap on Proposal A. The problem with the cap on taxable value is, the year after a property sells, it uncaps, so the taxable value becomes the same number as the assessed value. It can increase 40%, it could increase 100% if it has to. The problem with that is, the state considers that uncapping to be adjustment. That uncapping works against your Headley factor. So while Tom was showing you we're looking at a 4% increase in taxable value, you'll never see that much, because we've got a Headley factor, makes you lower your millage rate, because of all the uncapping. So when the market's exploding like it is right now, you're thinking to yourself, this is really great, we've got all these houses selling, we've got businesses selling, all this property is uncapping, forces your millage rate down. It's a double whammy. Was not anticipated for Proposal A when that went through that Headley would be affected by it, and it is. There's a large clamor statewide to get this fixed. It's been that way since about 2000, because the two are double dipping on you. They're forcing your revenues down. As an example, Tom had mentioned, I think we lost about 1/3 of the assessed value in the city during the recession. It was actually 33.33% for as far out as you can go with that number. Taxable value, we lost about 22 to 24% from the high point to the low point. Right now, the assessed value is at 93% of that high point. Pretty nice comeback in assessed value. The taxable value is actually doing fairly well. We're within about 13% of the high point. However, with the last 4 Headley reductions that we've had to take in our millage rate, that's a little better than a 2% decrease in the millage rate. So instead of being 12-13%, you're 15-16% below that point. And every time you get a large increase in taxable value, Headley's going to knock down the millage rate. We were levying 8.1 mills from, I think, 2008 when the amendment passed to the charter. We could have levied 8.5. That was how far Headley had come down from 10 mills. Charter-wide, we could levy 10 mills at one point in time. Headley reduced it to 8.5. We were levying 8.1. So the council could have raised the millage rate to 8.5 without a vote of the people. No amendment to the charter went in. Millage rate went down to 8.1. It's dropped every year since then, because you can't raise it back up without a vote of the people. The reason I'm up here is to explain to you at some point in time, you're going to have to ask the voters to increase that millage rate. It will be impossible to operate the city because it's just going to keep going down and your expenses just keep rising. Let's go to that next chart, Mark. This is just to show you how that worked during the recession. You can see in 2010, if the actual calculation were allowed for Headley, you'd have had a 12% increase in your millage rate. You can't. It can only be 1. You look down here, the last 4 years, 15, 16, 17, and 18, you see those Headley factors all the way across. You can see in 1, 2, 3, the 4th column down, how your allowable millage rate keeps dropping, and then your new reduced millage rate is applied. You apply the factor to the allowed rate, and then you get your new reduced rate. What this forces you to do is forces you to choose between operating and capital, because something has to be reduced. Now, the other important thing about Headley is it does not affect debt. Debt is promised to pay whatever the obligation is. That millage rate changes. It has affected the library. The very first year that the library renewal went through, the first year we went to collect, they got a Headley factor before we picked up a dime. So they took a reduction on a millage rate that they had just approved in November because the Headley factor came in and reduced the allowable millage rate that you could collect. I mentioned in the email, refuse is also affected by that, although we're so far away from our allowable millage. The state allows you to collect 3 mills for refuse. Headley's reduced it to 2.5. We levy 1.07. So as you go forward, you rebid your refuse contracts and stuff like that. You have a lot of room to cover expenses in refuse. I think that's pretty much all I have. Unless you have questions, you want to do it later. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, but I'll say it.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Nino. Okay, going back again to what Nino said, all funds again are average residential household, saying the taxable value is about $116,000, which means the city taxes on the average tax bill is going to be about $1,200. And again, we broke it between how much is for the general fund, capital fund, refuse, library and debt. Again, this is about a $20 increase from the prior year. If we go for the average residence, or a 1.7% increase, even though the average increase in residential taxable value back to Nino's point was about 2.3% overall. Okay, so again, even though the taxable value went up, the actual taxes collected only went up about 1.7 for the average resident. Okay, next, so if we break it up into the total tax bill, again, we're estimating because we don't know exactly what the school district or the county stuff is going to be at the end because they're putting that stuff in now. But kind of based on last year's millage rates, the total taxable value was that our tax bill is estimated about $4,356, of which again that $1,200 is for the city side of it, or only about 27% of the total tax bill. Next. Talk about revenues, let's talk about expenditures. Again, citywide, we budgeted about $148.7 million in total wide expenditures. As you can see now, this is by category as opposed by department, which we'll see in a bit. But by category, by far our largest category is personal services, which includes salaries, wages, FICA, workers' comp, healthcare, retirement benefits, and that accounts for about 39% of our total expenditures, or about, again, $57.2 million. The other major part for our expenditures is other service charges, which is $55 million, or about 37% of our budget, and that includes our professional and contracted services, utilities, our water costs, our sewer costs that we have to pay to Great Lakes Water Authority and the Oakland County Water Resource Authority. Also includes such things as the fire station stipends and our VFIT contributions. Okay, next. So now let's talk again, since we're on citywide, our legacy costs. Basically, we have 3 programs. First, the volunteer firefighter incentive program. Our contribution in this budget is about 1.3% as determined by an actuary study that we had. He said that you need, for this year, you need to put in about 1.3 million. We have budgeted to make up 100% of that contribution. It still leaves, though, an unfunded actuarial liability about $9 million to be 100% funded. Okay, so currently, as you can see here, we're about about 44% funded. Next is the retiree health care benefit plan, and that is currently about 56% funded. So you can see our contribution is big. It went up quite a bit this year, and we'll see that in a later slide. But our contribution for this year for retiree health care is about $5.6 million citywide. Our unfunded actuarial liability, actually accrued liability for that fund is about $59.1 million. So to make that 100% funded, we'd have to come up with about $59.1 million. And then finally, now that's bad news. Now the good news is the pension system is 117% funded. We are not required to make a contribution to that plan this year, and our unfunded actual liability, of course, is 0. So that's that on legacy costs. Next, we'll get off the all-fund stuff and get to I think what we're all most interested in is what's going on with the general fund. So I'm going to take this big overview, and we're just going to talk in big pieces here. Again, total revenues for the general fund are budgeted at $62.2 million. That's an increase of about $3.2 million, or 5.4%. We're going to talk a little bit more about revenue in a minute here. Total expenditures and other sources are budgeted at $64.8 or $9 million. That's an increase of about $512,000 or 0.8%. If we take, which then means then that we're going to use about $2.7 million in fund balance. And really this $2.7 million, a lot of it has to do from 2018 where we budgeted, again, for these fire trucks and other things that we're not going to have completed. So what's happening is we're carrying over the fire trucks of about 1.6 million to expend out of this year, because we won't be expending it out of the 2018 fiscal year. So that's really a carryover that accounts for quite a bit of that shortfall. Okay, again, really what I'm trying to show here is that the balance is, the budget is balanced. Okay, that all of our revenues and fund balance is equal to or more than our budgeted expenditures, so it is a balanced budget. And it also demonstrates that the budget is designed to get us back in compliance with our unassigned fund balance policy, which is between 20 and 30% of our annual expenditures. So as we can see from that, it's a balanced budget and it's designed to put us back in compliance with that policy. Next. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about general fund revenues. And again, this is on page 61 in your budget. Clearly, the majority of our revenue sources is taxes. For the general fund, that's about 53%. It's about again, this is about $62.2 million in total. Taxes went up about $1.2 million, or about 3.9% compared to the prior year budget. Next. Our big part is charges for services, which is about $9.2 million, or accounts for about 15% of the general fund budget. This is an increase of about $1.2 million also, but it's about 15% compared to last year. And a lot of it has to do with Bill Hootery and the engineering department doing row inspections and a significant amount of work for their department on that side. Finally, the last part of our major functions, our financial sources for the general fund is state shared revenue, and that's budgeted at $8.3 million, or accounts for about 13% of our total budget. This is going up about $438,000, or about 5.6% we're projecting for 2019. Okay. Next, let's talk about expenditures. Okay, this is also on page 61 in your budget. Overall expenditures, again, are budgeted at $64.9 million, by far the largest part of our expenditures. Now we're talking about service levels that we provide. By far our largest is for public safety at 34.3%, or accounts for about 53% of our total budget. If we, let's see, yep. So if we ignore our transfers out, again, we said this transfer out is for the fire trucks that we carried forward from the prior year, then our total operating budget is about $63.3 million. And this is an increase of about $2.7 million, or about 4.4% compared to last year's budget. I think at this time I'm going to bring on Acting City Manager Miller to highlight some of the more salient points of the increase in the prior year budget.
Thank you,
for the
Tim.
general fund.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of major expenditures that we want to highlight. First, $100,000 in contractual service for engineering inspection is up 20%. Tom mentioned that, and when there is a lot of development and a lot of work in the right of way, there are a lot of inspections which we need to do. $200,000 in increased building maintenance services, up 24%. We're in the process of out to bid and selecting a new company to clean our buildings, basically. $15,000 for a city app to help residents to be able to communicate with us with problems they want fixed, such as potholes and things of that nature. And then we have $25,000 for the resident survey, which we're going to talk about at a study meeting coming up soon. $220,000 for contractual service, equipment, and maintenance, and this is for fleet maintenance and repair of fire trucks. In the past, were not being charged appropriately. Fleet was just not billing the fire department for them. Is that correct, or is that a fair statement?
Fair, yes.
Yeah, okay. $130,000 for, oh, I made a mistake. That's why I really came in. Building maintenance service, this is for 2 techs in Public Works to work on facilities. And I apologize. I actually went to get clarification from her earlier today, and I made a mistake. So now this is custodial services. This is the one where we're going to be, we have out to bid right now for a new contract for cleaning the buildings. Reimagine Citizens Academy, we're going to utilize existing resources in Cindy Stewart, and then $50,000 additional in this budget for Medigo. So personnel, we're up 5% to 1.9 million, $1 million for retirement contributions. Even though the IRS is down 600,000, it's a $500,000 net increase. Then $1.4 million is for 4 new employees, the 2 building maintenance techs that I had just mentioned earlier, 1 housing and zoning inspector, but this is a replacement of a part-time with a full-time. We had an employee, Gary Bowers, who recently retired a second time. Back in the Great Recession, he had decided to retire and to ensure that he knew what his benefits were going to be, but then he worked 4 days a week. And so now he retired again, and we're going to replace it with a full-time position in the planning department. And then 1 associate buyer for the purchasing department. And then wage increases, associated fringes, and merit increases. And I believe Director Bowenseat, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're going to start with the Water Department first as Public Works Divisions. And just to be noted, all the managers of the Public Works Divisions are here in the event that there's any specific questions to the operations later on in the presentation. One thing we really concentrate in the Water Department is good water. Even though we get our water from the Great Lakes Water Authority, there are a lot of things in our system that can affect the quality of our water. The MDEQ sets certain thresholds of contaminants where just 1 causes alarm and then 2 to cause action. You can see that our lead and copper are well below even the alarm threshold that the MDEQ has set. Reliability is another big thing the Water and Sewer Division concentrates on with Great Lakes Water connections. In this current year's budget, we have a new connection at Beach Road and South Boulevard to duplicate and to improve our redundancy of our system. In the event that one of the connections go down through the Great Lakes Water Authority, we can still supply the residents' water. All 6,001 fire hydrants are serviced annually. That not only is to protect the residents, but also to assist with our ISO rating in the fire department that we have all functioning fire hydrants. Water main valve turning, what the water department employees go on and do is they actually exercise the valves that close off our water system, that in the event that there's a water main break, we can have limited isolation and affect the least amount of customers that we possibly can. The sewer main servicing, that constitutes going out and actually cleaning all over 500 miles of sewer annually. So we go out and we jet and we televise a lot of that too to ensure that we can carry that waste away properly. Water rates, I know we've talked a lot about water rates in the past. We'll spend a little brief time here. This just shows you a history of what the water and sewer rates have been in the city of Troy. Again, these are reflective of what the Great Lakes Water Authority charges the city of Troy, and then what the Oakland County Water Resource Commission charges the city of Troy to remove the waste. A lot of those charges are fixed costs through the Great Lakes Water Authority, and then there are some variable costs which are based on annual sales. These rates were established with a 470 million cubic feet of water sold annually, and that is really weather dependent. A lot of times people say, hotels, the addition of the hotels or additional commercial buildings, nothing moves the needle in water like water. If we have a dry year, irrigation, that's going to move the needle a lot. Wet year, no irrigation, we're not going to sell as much water. Here's a different table that shows the different rates and historic rates and what we're proposing. We're proposing no change in the water rates to be steady at $39.30, and then a slight increase in the sewer rate. Again, that is reflective of what the Water Resource Commission is charging us. When you combine the two, it is a 1.2% increase over the previous year, and you can see there's modest increases in the proposed in the 3-year budget as well. Next is the Facilities Division, which a lot of you know as the Building Maintenance Division. We're in the process of rebranding that to the Facilities Division now. That's under one manager as the Facilities and Grounds Operations Manager. We'll talk more about the facility assessment and its unknown conclusion of all the 52 facilities that the city maintains on Thursday more in depth. But basically, this process that council you approved to go through is IDS is going through and assessing all 52 buildings, everything from the structure to its mechanical, to efficiencies, ADA compliances. So they're wrapping that up in the next month, so we'll have that very detailed report and we'll be able to assess what our facilities need in the upcoming years. And they will also prioritize those needs for us moving forward. A big move that just happened recently is moving the actual operation of the facilities department over to the Department of Public Works. This was about a year in the making as Steve Pilata retired and they became the DPW family. We recognized that it was an important efficiency to have them a part of the DPW over there and using all of the resources. And combining the grounds division under one manager, as I mentioned, Dennis Trantham, who is now the Facilities and Grounds Operations Manager, can take those two divisions and marry them together and increase efficiency. Increasing staff by one full-time position, although it is essentially two positions, we are eliminating some part-time positions to create that second position. But it is a new one full-time position when you don't take into consideration the part-time position. Very important to the Facilities Division is analytics. They are instituting CityWorks, where, as some of you may know, I talk a lot about CityWorks. We use it very heavily in the Department of Public Works, where you can look at that information. So all work orders and service requests are running through our asset management program, CityWorks, so we can really analyze what the department is doing, where are we concentrating our efforts most on, can we increase those efficiencies, or do we need to look at the facility itself to make those kinds of corrections. And it really improves customer response. Although our customers are the departments themselves, a lot of things what we heard was from other departments is we would put a work order in, but we wouldn't know when it would get done or if it got done until we actually went out there and physically saw. So with using CityWorks, the customer, or again, the other department, gets a response immediately. It's assigned to a certain technician, and that technician can communicate through this program pretty readily. As Mark mentioned, is one of the major contributing factors to the increase in the custodial budget is the new contract that's out to bid or going out to bid very shortly. It is estimated, with Dennis's experience in a lot of custodial management at the other places he's worked, that our contract can expect to go up 40%. So it's about a $130,000 increase throughout the entire city to clean all 52 facilities. Streets and Drains divisions, we're normal operations for snow removal, sometimes later in April than we would have wished, but we were out there this past weekend. But one important thing and notable thing in this year's budget is what's called the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4 for short. It is a state of Michigan mandate that locals have a better control over their stormwater. So your surface water going into the catch basins. What we have to do, and we have completed the plan, is pay better attention in our inspections, document our inspections, really look for those illicit discharge and have an elimination program. So the rule of thumb is if it has color, if it has suds, or if it has an odor, it doesn't belong down the catch basin. And oftentimes a lot of people put things down the catch basin. So having a program is in compliance with the MS4, but it is going to take additional resources. The Grounds Division, which is formerly the Parks Division, as we rebrand, one of its major concentrations over the next budget year is Trails and Pathways. As I'm sure all you are well aware, we have a Trails and Pathways Committee that meet often to go over. We recently have established the neighborhood nodes that we would like to connect with, and then we will continue on connecting those nodes in the next budget year with, of course, public engagement. I think I've mentioned it in the past, but maybe worth noting again, that we are working with the Michigan Department of Transportation to reserve a section of I-75 between the Civic Center and Long Lake for future pathway, because that is one of the most difficult areas to get to the north. So we are working with MDOT, and they have agreed to reserve an easement for a trail and pathway one day. Refuse and recycling. We are having an open house at the soccer facility here this Thursday that I believe all council is invited to. But currently, we are not proposing any increase to the refuse and recycling millage, so it's staying steady at 1.07 mils. The recycling aspect of our refuse and recycling is there's still some uncertainty there. prices are really fluctuating right now on the recycled materials, especially with steel and believe it or not, paper goods, with what's going at the global level with China and exporting and importing. So we want to just keep that steady, that 1.07, but with a close eye on it, because if prices to continue to decline on those recyclable goods, means we have to pay more for our refuse because we don't have that revenue to take it down. We could be taking that fund balance a little lower than what we feel comfortable with. So for over the next couple of years, we'll continue to monitor that fund balance. But the good news is trash is down and recycling is up. So the recycling, the curbside mixed recycling and the bigger totes seem to be working. Another point of interest in this year's budget, in the proposed budget, is having Tringali provide the customer service for the refuse line. Currently, our Public Works coordinator takes those calls in and plays middle person to call Tringali. A lot of times it's I didn't get my trash picked up, or for whatever reason, maybe the container was too big, so we call Tringali to get the information and call the resident back. So Tringali has put together a proposal that would be $52,000 a year to take all of those calls over at their facility and handle with them directly while still reporting to the city of Troy. And if this proposed budget passes, you'll see that contract come before you for approval here in the very near future. And lastly, transportation, which is the Big Beaver shuttle service. We have been communicating with SMART, and SMART has committed that the purchase of 3 new gas shuttle buses, and their expected arrival is September. So that'll alleviate some expense to the current repair of our buses. They also have agreed to a new trolley, which has a little bit more lead time, an 18-month lead time. And here in a minute, I'll show you a picture of the trolley that we're in communications with SMART with. But ridership in 2018, so January to March only, we had just almost 4,000 riders on the shuttle. And remember, that is our new service hours running 6 days a week in the afternoon. And when you compare that to 2017, which actually includes the first 15 days of service in December that we did, you can see that that's quite a bit higher. Year to date, which does not include the special events like Troy Days or the Winter Wonderland, we're at about 14,500 riders to date. And that would be an image of the trolley that we're in discussions with SMART with. It's about the same size as we have now, just newer and a lower platform, so it doesn't have to have a ADA accessible wheelchair lift.
Good evening. A bit of a cold, so I'll do the best I can. I apologize. It was a theme from this year's retreat of going back to our roots. What I did is I put a call out to all the supervisors to give me 3 items that they thought were noteworthy to present to council, consolidated all those, and that's the bulk of what you're going to see tonight. So we're just talking about who we are and what we do. So we took the strategies, and I could read through these. These are the city strategies, and then these are our methods to meet these strategies. This is highlighting our day-to-day operations. This is who we are, it's what we do. We provide the walk-up desk service. Many of you know we're utilizing retired police officers at a much cheaper rate than staffing with police officers to help us cut our costs. We also have in our lobby volunteers from our volunteer force that come in and direct people where to go. It's a very good customer service model. We put out 3 patrol shifts every day. At those patrol, the roll calls, the officers are given assignments. They discuss their patrol areas, what they're going to work, and certain particular items they should be working on that day. So if there's a hot spot or some other crimes they should be aware of, they're told to work on those. They discuss what's going on. They get their equipment issued. We have a communications section that's 24/7. It dispatches police, fire, EMS for Troy, and we have a contract with Clawson, so we also dispatch for Clawson PD. We do the same thing with our lockup. Our lockup facility is a 72-hour hold facility. We have a contract for Clawson to handle Clawson's prisoners, and we put Troy prisoners in there also. Road patrols out there 24/7. So When there's an ice storm, road patrol's out there handling calls for service. And you can imagine they get a lot of alarms when all the power's going out. There's a lot of calls for service that they handle. They're out there, no matter what the weather, no matter floods, better than the post office. This is just showing some of the data we use when we're deciding what we're going to do and work with our officers. We, obviously in response to what's been going on with schools and some of the school shootings, we want to make sure we have more of a presence in our schools. So we had our officers before they were aware, they would spend time in schools. We want to actually have data to show that we're going into schools and doing things. So Captain Redmond assigned to the road patrol officers, they had to go in to the schools, do walkthroughs, and spend more time in schools. So this will show how we're increasing the walkthroughs with schools. Lately, with some of the incidents that have been going on, to give more of a sense of security to people, we've asked the officers if they're writing police reports or they're going to be out in their car to park in school lots. And it shows we have more of a presence here. We want more of a uniform presence in the schools. We also have reassigned one of our community services officer for a month to be a direct school liaison and work with Officer John Julian and go to schools. We're going to do that for a month just to build the people's confidence and build a sense of security. We're illustrating our calls for service. They hold pretty steady. Right now, looks like we had our dip in our calls for service, and looks like we're going back up to where we historically have been in that 35,000 range. We take out our traffic stops. We do a lot of traffic law enforcement. So traffic stops are not included in those numbers. If you put traffic stops in there, the numbers would be exponentially higher. We do our staffing based on time of day call service and day of week. So we look at what days are the busy days and what time of day is busy. That's how we do our resource allocation for our police officers. We've discussed before our hotspot maps for data. So down in the lower right, you can see that's one for traffic crashes. And I'm sure everybody can recognize Big Beaver Road, which tends to be one of our hot spots for crashes in the city. Gets most traffic. Our drunk driving arrests are down a bit. Drunk driving is one of our major points of enforcement. We used to have 4 shifts, so we had overlap of shifts. When we had a reduction in our staffing, we had to get rid of one of the shifts. So that took out some of the overlap that we used to enjoy in the past. And then we had to realign the starting time of the afternoon shift so they get off earlier. So they used to be out there during the peak drunk driving enforcement, but because of not having the 4 shifts, we had to have them start earlier, because if we didn't, we'd have the day shift guys who are always getting held over for calls for service. So when they're realignment, we don't have the same number of people out there during the peak drunk driving times. Plus, I think we can look at one officer taking a different shift and assignment, and she's our great drunk driving enforcement officer, so when she changes her assignment to be K-9, that affects our drunk driving ability. We're going to discuss on Thursday the increase in traffic crashes that we had. That's one of the issues that will be on the Thursday topic. As you can see, over the past several years, we've had an increase of almost 12% since 2010 in traffic crashes. Again, and this is who we are, so what we do, we spend a lot of time training our people. We find it leads to a higher quality police department. It's a morale enhancer, a great way of rewarding people who do good work. So we spend a lot of time on the gun range, training our people with guns. 2 budget items this year on enhancing the gun range for soundproofing and making sure it's working really good. And then we also have a budget request so we can get some new police pistols. This is a pistol retention exercise that we're doing there. We do train our officers in physical standards. Thanks to the council approving in previous years the patrol rifle system, we've been able to get patrol rifles out to every officer. And with the loan capability we have, many officers have started purchasing their own patrol rifles that they can bring to work and use. We have a very robust field training officer program. Make sure we're taking good people. We get a lot of our people from other agencies. We bring them in, and we call it, show them the Troy way. And with our good training officers, we're able to make sure we get people trained in how we do things in Troy. And this is illustrating a class at the training center. Many of you know the training center is used by the police and fire department. Pretty much every day you go by there, you're going to see there's people there utilizing the training center. And what we do is we bring in outside trainers, and we don't charge them a fee from the police department to use our facility. So they're not paying direct money fee, but what we do is we get free spaces in the class. So what we're doing is we're getting a variety of training opportunities to come in for our officers, and we can make sure that they get trained. This is an FBI class on hostage negotiation, and this class actually had people come as far away from Europe to attend this class. We've got several different units in the police department. These are, most of them are double teamed. They're officers that work in regular patrol or other assignments that they also do. They do these other special units. It's our tactical support team, honor guard. You're going to see at this year's ceremony, the honor guard has actually got the funding to put the memorial in front of the station. That's going to be quite an event for us on Police Memorial Day. Our special investigations unit, they do a lot of drug raids. They target serial criminals that may be impacting the area. So thieves, if people have crimes against person, we target them and put our surveillance unit on them. Criminal information unit, they mainly spend time on a lot of the technology now. The way computers are and phones, we have to have our own experts that can do that. And what this enables us to do is have a faster turnaround on that evidence. Some other jurisdictions don't have that luxury of having 2 officers that's their main job. They do that. It's up 6 months to a year turnaround to get information back on computers and phones, depending on how complex the case is. With us, we can do it within a few days. Our direct patrol unit in the lower right, they would target areas of crime in the city. And very good unit, been around for years. What they've started doing is we've started using them for our licensing checks. So they end up spending a lot more time doing liquor licensing checks, the compliance, the tobacco compliance tests. They've been working on the hookah lounges. They spend time on massage parlors. They've been involved with and trained in a lot of the human trafficking. And we're starting to see more issues in our hotels because of the internet and the ease that people can arrange human trafficking or prostitution issues at hotels. So they've been very involved with that. 3 K-9 officers that do a really good job with the K-9 units. Our evidence technicians handle pretty much everything up to blood and major crime scenes. For that, we call either the state police or the sheriff's department. We handle the bulk of our evidence gathering ourselves. And we have traffic specialists that work with the socket team that can handle crash investigations, especially some of the more complex ones. We're very proud of the education and prevention programs we have. We're very involved with the Alliance Against Hate Crimes. We helped develop that group. We've been doing presentations on human trafficking. We want to make sure that with our massage parlors and any of the prostitution issues that we have, that we're not dealing with human traffic victims. We do a really good job with that. Many of you are aware of the Hope Not Handcuffs program, which is basically taking people who may have opioid addictions and getting them in a treatment route rather than get them in the criminal justice system. It's a voluntary program. So far it seems to be going very good. This is a photograph of John Julian doing an active assailant response training. This was up at Kensington Church. We had in the neighborhood of 1,200 people attend this training. So it's obviously quite the topic, and we do a really good job of addressing items that need to be talked about. And it's just showing some of the items we do. That's a Halloween safety bash. We do many, many things. I don't want to bore you with every single thing we do. We do a lot of community outreach. I never thought I'd be hearing about cats the way I hear about them. What started out as something very light has just taken off. There's no going back. We do building tours on Police Memorial Day. Get 1,000 people coming through for building tours. We do readings at the schools for Reading Week. This is one of the most fun things I was able to do in my law enforcement career, reading kids at schools. Many other people within the city volunteer to do that. We do Coffee with a Cop program. That's taken off very good. We get a lot of people coming in, gives them an opportunity to talk to police officers. Sergeant Lehman's going to meet with someone tomorrow who has some concerns on mental health issues, and she's going to use the opportunity to talk to the person at the Coffee with a Cop. And then we do the Shop with a Cop programs. I'm not going to go through every one of these. Some of you have seen this slide before, or variations of it. It's just showing all the partnerships that we work on. Our people can't do it by themselves. There's a lot of professionals here that reach out, they have personal relationships with all the people that you see their agencies represented up here. It brings a better product back to Troy and allows us to do a lot more things with the people that we have. So I'm really proud of a lot of these associations that we have. That concludes what I had, and we'll have any questions later on. Chief?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to briefly describe the makeup of the fire department because I think that helps frame our budget. So we're considered a combination style fire department. So what does that mean? That means we have a combination of volunteers and career staff. As you can see, we've authorized for 180 volunteers among our stations. We're currently at about 163, and we're authorized for budgeted for 12 career staff. We're currently at 11. So that makeup is about 93.3% volunteer and 6.7% career staff. So it's really unique. And when you think about the makeup of the city of Troy, the size, the population, the commercial and industrial makeup that we have, it's really unique that it's protected by primarily volunteers. So we're the largest combination style department in the state of Michigan, to our knowledge. We're the largest fire department in Oakland County. We have a combined staffing of 175 people, 6 fire stations, and 20 apparatus. And apparatus is the term that we use for basically our fire trucks. Our proposed budget is $5.6 million for this coming fiscal year. Represents about a 2% increase from last fiscal year, or about $110,000 overall, mostly in the areas of supplies and service charges. To really get an appreciation, you can compare our budget to similar fire departments. So for example, City of Sterling Heights, we operate at 1/3 the cost of their fire department. They have 5 fire stations. They have 84 career members. City of Southfield, we're also about 1/3 of their operating. They have also 5 fire stations. They have 88 career members. Rochester Hills, our neighbors to the north, they also have 5 fire stations. They have 48 career members, and they also have some part-time firefighters. Whereas again, we have 6 fire stations, 175 people, and we're a little over $5.5 million. All of those departments, as many career departments do, is they provide EMS, advanced life support. We also do it in the form of contracting with Alliance Mobile Health. And so that's also part of our budget. So you can still see that by comparison, we're offering the same services, and we're doing it at 1/3 or half the cost in a lot of cases. So what's the value? Well, we've been doing this for 78 years, and we have a committed and dedicated group of volunteers and career staff members. We have a proactive fire prevention and education approach. Our proactive approach, we believe, helps reduce the occurrence of fire in the community, so we don't have to run and respond to fire calls as often as many other cities do. Trained and qualified personnel. We like to say, and we do, the statistics show that we operate at 99%, anywhere between 93, 95, 99% operating efficiency. And so in the annual report, if you looked at that, that's basically the value of property that's threatened by fire versus the value of property that's lost to fire, and that equates to anywhere between a 93 to a 99% save. So it's tough to measure the efficiency of a fire department, but when you look at the numbers, that's a good way of doing that, and I like to hang our hat on that. I think that's something that we can be proud of. We're an ISO Class 3 fire department. We're still hoping for a Class 2. I don't know if we're going to get there. We're pretty close, but we're still working with ISO on that, and it's a significant tax savings.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight I brought Nikki Teacher with me. She has purple stuff on. She's one of our biggest changes that we had last year, and she works full-time. Most recently, Carla Vaughn retired at the end of March, and her replacement, Mary DiCaro, she's coming next week. Nikki's been working really hard to find out about the changing demographics of the 50-plus population. She put out a survey, more than 350-plus participated in it. They told us that they'd like more earlier programs in the morning before work because a lot of them are still working, and more weekends and evening programs. So a lot of what I'm going to touch on will address some of those needs. We're collaborating a lot more with our marketing coordinator, talking a lot about how to get to the 50-plus population that don't see themselves as seniors or don't really recognize what 50-plus means. So we're still working on those things with our marketing coordinator, Elizabeth. New programs are new day trips, healthy cooking, nature trails, coffee concerts, and starting our relationship with DMC. Our medical ridership program is still extremely popular. That's why we're requesting additional funding this year for another bus. In 2017, more than 600 seniors were denied service because all 5 buses were full. They are transporting, give or take, about 80, 85 people a day per bus. So they're maxed out. They use a computer tablet that maximizes their route and makes them a lot more efficient than they used to be. So $50,000 would cover the wages, the fuel, the insurance, the tablet costs to cover that additional bus. And as I say, we have 5 buses right now. They do have 1 van for emergencies because, as Kurt touched on, his buses break down, so do ours. So in those instances, we do have the van. Just as a comparison to show you how wild and crazy it goes, in 2014, we had 14,000 riders, and last year they had 18,000. So it is on a clip of almost 1,000 a year. If you go back and look at, we had 633 people denied last year. So it's extremely popular. Nikki's been working on, which I'll received an invitation to our volunteer banquet in early May. I know, new bingo machine, probably not at the top of your list, but our current machine was over 20 years old and was very antiquated and required a lot of repairs. So we're working on training. We have the machine, and it'll be up and running soon. Me and my grand series, speaker series, new technology, new orientation, and DMC. Our next biggest undertaking with the Recreation Department last year was the opening of the dog park, and we are in charge of the dog park memberships. So working with our rec track system, we've sold a crazy amount of dog park passes. Right now, almost 600 resident dogs have memberships and 162 non-resident dogs have memberships. We are planning a 1-year anniversary event in September. The restrooms will be put in by June 30th, and the shelter will come later this summer. So our marketing, which I left you examples, has really been amped up with Alyssa Firth is working full-time, and we have a marketing assistant. So we've worked really hard to make our brand look similar, new color schemes, new logos. Of course, we also have a new website. It's separate from the city, but you can get to us through there. In December, we won, February, we won 2 marketing awards. One for our program brochure that you see up there on your right, and one for our activity guide. This year, we're going to be amping up our social media. Our Facebook is going to be more consistent. So we're really working on connecting with the younger generations, the new moms, things like that. We launched our Twitter for the Aquatic Center and the Instagram for the Aquatic Center. So those will both be new this year. My favorite is our special events. We're back out in the community a lot more than we ever used to be. Our Fall Fest went gangbusters in October. We had more than 3,000 people there. It was up at the farm. Some of you were there. Great family event. We had a beautiful day, and we plan to have that event this year again. Our art fair went really well. It used to be our senior arts and crafts show. which was turning into arts and crafts show / flea market / I think they cleaned out their closet. But last year, Nikki worked with Alyssa, we really revamped that, had some beautiful artwork there. A lot of people are re-signing up again this year, had over 600 shoppers, lots of positive feedback, and everybody was really happy with the changes. Our biggest and best partnership we've had with the library last year was year number 2, and with the community affairs department and library, we had, again, saw over 5,000 people at our event. Both our buildings were packed. Couldn't say any more greater things about it. Lastly, just to touch on our biggest increases this year budget will be personnel wages. Again, we can continue to get when the majority of our staff is part-timers and the minimum wage continues to go up. We are hit with a big ticket for that. Let it go bus again is $50,000. Professional services for, as Kurt mentioned, for building maintenance, an increase there, and custodial services, which we can't wait for that to happen. So.
Thank you, Elaine. All right, to summarize where we're at, our presentation is finished up, but I want to point out what we're going to do on Thursday is we're going to present the capital fund summary, and then we want to identify 4 issues. 2 of them are known things with unknown costs. That's the pay and class study, which could have a dramatic financial impact depending on what comes out in the study. We just don't know what that will be. And then the facilities maintenance study. We have some preliminary indications. One, a new HVAC unit for the court building, $1 million. So what we're saying is we have these 2 large white elephants that are out there that could potentially have significant impact to our budgets, not just this coming up year, but into the future years. And then the 7th day for the Troy Public Library, flowers in the median, and the traffic safety unit for the police department. And then we'll answer any questions that you have that we can't answer this evening. And then further council discussion, any other questions. So this is at the point which we turn this over to City Council to ask for clarifications and questions. We'll try to answer them in real time if we can. If we can't, we'll answer them Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Councilman Hamilton, I see that you're ready for some.
I'll try not to be too many. And maybe just because I'm new, do we have an estimate of our long-term infrastructure costs? You know, you kind of did our legacy costs for healthcare and pensions, but I'd like to know like what our long-term infrastructure costs would be estimated would be.
Bill Hoover?
We're working on a road. Not looked at other components.
I know roads is the vast majority.
But Bill, you do work on a capital plan.
We do have a 5-year capital improvement program, but it's more so maintenance than long-term infrastructure.
Yeah, I want to personally just get a sense of, 30 years down the road, what would we need? And I'm not going to direct that. That might be a huge task to figure that out, but just personally curious what that is. So any info that's available. Maybe broad estimates. I'd just like to get a sense of that.
All right. Questions from Councilman? Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. For some reason, the questions I wrote down related to the Public Works Department. I think maybe I'm looking for a couple. Maybe you don't know the answers, but you might. With regards to the Tringali contract for the customer service, I think customer service is a great thing to encourage and increase. I'm curious if you have any estimate, and Emily might know, how many calls per week you get now that would then be directed directly to Tringali for $1,000 a week.
I did get a total by the month, which correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, but I believe it was about 400, 500 calls that I took like in December, which is typically a little bit of a slower month. So that's how many calls I take in roughly.
It's a lot.
So,
I wondered,
Yeah, and I have a direct line for the refuse. So I've got 2 lines coming in, one directly for refuse and recycling, and then one from this one. items that I take care of.
Okay. And do they, just, or I don't know if this is Kurt or whoever, but does Tringali, I mean, do they have this customer service program? Are they utilizing this specific program with other communities or something like this?
No, they're not, no. And the reason why we went to Tringali, obviously, because they're our trash hauler through the soccer program. So we looked at avenues to go through soccer to provide this service, but we thought, again, it's not only to alleviate some time, unnecessary time that Emily is spending answering these questions, but it's really to improve the customer service, to talk directly to the people that are picking up the refuse and recycling.
That's good. Sure. The trolley and the shuttle, and I don't know that this can be answered, but I just want to clarify, when you talk about the number of, we say, oh, that's not now. Oh, wow, I don't talk about the trolley, I'm sorry. Can't help myself. We aren't tracking whether or not it's, over the year, it's 14,000 plus individual riders or rides total, right? I mean, it's rides total. Those numbers are rides, not actual riders.
Those are actual riders. We have to report. So we have a clicker every time somebody comes on the bus.
But, I mean, like, that could be the same people using it several times, right?
Yes,
Okay,
we
yeah.
have a lot of, repeat riders.
That's my only question on the trolley for now, except that I guess we are looking now at going back to ordering a trolley. Last I had heard, we were not going to have the trolley. I thought we had a report on that.
That was determined that for special events and for the marketing of the Big Beaver shuttle, it was important to keep the trolley, and that was working with SMART. Originally in that report, we didn't think SMART was going to be able to procure a trolley. Again, that trolley portion is still in the infancy stage. They have not ordered it yet. They have ordered the 3 other buses.
And finally, my other question, with regards to trails and pathways, with my understanding, I think the mayor, we talked about this in the past, if there was going to be money that wasn't utilized in this fiscal year, that would carry forward to the next year. Is that still the plan? Was there an overage? Was there money that was not used? What was budgeted?
We don't know yet. We're in the process of still constructing that. The way that contract was written is there was a lot of unknowns as we excavated the earth next to the county drain. So we will have a better determination here later in May, once that project wraps up, of how much money it was left over. Also, so the actual construction of the trail was under the $750,000 budget for this current year. We also have to consider the consultant costs to manage that project and assist with designing the project. So we'll have a better answer to that at the end of May.
Is that also when, I mean, do we have any time frame on when we might expect to see a phase 2 proposal?
No, I don't. The idea is to open this trail, to get people familiar with what the trail could look like before we start having public engagement again. As here is an example, I think a lot of people understand what it is to like walk on a sidewalk or walk through neighborhoods, but not a lot of people understand what is it like to walk through a really wooded area on a paved trail through a heavily populated city of Troy. So I think once they get familiar with that, if any of our plans is to continue that theme, they'll have a better understanding of what it could look like.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Councilman Henderson.
Rattle off a few of them. More a statement than anything. Looking at the funds for the retirement and the healthcare and the volunteer firefighter fund, we're 117% funded in the one. That money cannot be transferred to the others.
Correct.
Just so people are very clear about that. Okay.
Wish we could.
Wish we could, right. The question I had about recycling. Recycling is up about 22%. Trash is down 12%. I'm going to assume it's because of the single source and the bigger bins and that kind of thing. But I know we get revenue from the recycling, but the fact that the trash goes down, that won't increase the costs necessarily for trash pickup, right?
Correct. Collections, so we have our disposal costs and we have our collection costs when we talk refuse. The collection cost is a per pickup per household, so we're not going to see that fluctuate. They're still going to every house regardless of how much trash they have in front of their house. It's disposal costs that we're going to save on, and that cost, so that's borne on SACRA. We pay SACRA for that service. So as disposal costs go down, less money we pay for SACRA, revenue and recycling goes up. That's why there's that level of uncertainty still, and we're not proposing any increase to the millage over the next 3 years at this point.
Okay, so recycling, more recycling brings more revenue to the city just because of the recycling factor. But disposal costs of the trash won't necessarily bring that cost down because they're still making stops to every city.
Collections.
Every home.
Collections, it wouldn't, but it would decrease the disposal cost because the less is going to the landfill, the more recycling. We're getting revenue on the recycling, paying less to dispose of what would have been in the garbage.
Okay, so good news on both counts. Okay, and then the trolley, I'm going to assume that new hours, you mentioned that. Is it new hours and awareness that we're building, or is it just the new hours? Do we have a feel for that, the ridership being up on the trolley?
I think, you know, we don't have anything really to quantify it, so it's just our personal opinion. And Emily and I have talked, and I think our next assistant, who's our marketing person, who's going out and marketing, working with restaurants for coupons to ride the trolley, get off this stop, get 10% off. I think that is really helping.
Okay. Further, Chief mentioned that we're ISO Class 3 fire department and we're working towards Class 2. Is there anything that you need from us to be able to get to that Class 2 level? Or
we don't have enough time tonight for me to ask for it's difficult to answer that right away. I can put together a summary for you, but the way ISO does the grading is there's credits that kind of lead toward a grade, and so the range for Class 3 is from 70 to 80. We're 77.01, so we're 2.99 away from the minimum criteria for Class 2. A lot of what we're short in is personnel, certification for our officers. It's difficult to get 36 volunteer officers certified to be fire officers because that takes time away from their jobs, their families. They're typically, 5-day courses, and so we're kind of short in those areas. We're looking to try to make up some of that. There's some calculations that the evaluator said that maybe were done, not to say wrong, but an error that he missed when he did our evaluation. So we've had a conference call with him. I've got an email from him to have another conference call with him to see if we can't gain any of those credits to improve our score to get to a better grade. So hopefully I answered your question, but it's not a long schedule and there's a lot of intricacies, so it's really difficult to say specifically what we're short on.
Can't wave a wand to fix that.
Unfortunately.
Okay, and then recreation, the dog park, 596 residents, dogs have memberships. Do we have any idea how many licensed dogs there are in Troy? I mean, what kind of percentage is that? Is that a good percentage of?
You don't know?
I don't know.
Don't know that. Okay. I didn't mean to trick you out there.
3,011.
Okay, so it's a pretty small percentage of.
We've done it a couple times.
And two for Acting Manager Miller, pay and class study. What is that? I know you'll fill us in next week or Thursday on that, but.
What it is it's a study of all the positions in the city, or I should say, the classified and exempt positions, and review where they are in grade-wise in relation to other grades and other job titles, and then whether appropriate salaries.
Scales, okay, got it. And then the one thing I wanted to, since we have the Nature Center, or excuse me, the Historic Village represented here, our strategy number 11 is strengthen relationships with Troy-based nonprofit organizations. I think during the retreat, we didn't just call out the Coalition School District and Medigo. I think we added those other nonprofits. Should that be a bullet
yes,
point in there?
Yes, it should be a bullet point. That in the Nature Society.
Right. Okay.
Actually, can I check with Chief Roberts, piggybacking a question that Dave Henderson just asked? Now, other than, like bragging rights, going from a class 3 to class 2, what, would that affect like insurance rates that we pay, or?
Yes. And the ISO is the Insurance Services Offices, so insurance companies subscribe to that. It's a private organization. And so insurance companies can subscribe to that to base their rates on how they assess premiums.
Right.
So, yeah, it's bragging rights. There's an accreditation that departments can go through, but that's an awful lot of time and expense, and we just don't have the personnel or the resources to do that. So besides bragging rights, it does help with insurance premiums. The difference between a Class 3 and a Class 2, I don't know. Would have to figure out what those calculations are. So bottom line is yes, an improved grade does help with insurance premiums for the subscriber.
Okay, thank you. Question for Tom here. These funding percentages for the volunteer firefighter and the retiree healthcare, have these funding percentages go up every year over year, or is it something that?
Well, we'd like them to go up every year. It all depends on financial performance, right, of the investments, offset by the assumptions being used, i.e. in relation to healthcare, what they think healthcare is going to go up. So sometimes we gain a point, sometimes we lose a point. The idea is, though, over 25 years that we're going to make up, right, if we make our required contributions,
right,
as determined by the actuary, theoretically, right, after 25 years for the employment of the retiree health care, we would be 100% funded. So not only are we making the normal contributions, but we're kicking in extra, right, to help reduce that unfunded liability.
Yep.
Of that $56 million that you see in there. So.
I remember it was either last year or the year before, we put in quite a bit for the firefighter fund.
For the firefighter, we put actually, $2 million kind of one lump in addition to the regular, right? Because if you remember, the council approved that 5-year schedule, right, in the amount that they get for per year of service. If you remember, it's like a 5-year thing to kind of get them up to a certain dollar amount.
Yep.
For credit for amount they get per year of service is the benefit.
So this is something we look at every year just to kind of keep track.
Absolutely, and again, the idea is to be 100% funded, between 25 and 30 years.
Right. The other question I had was, I understand that the $200,000 for the general fund, the building maintenance services is adding 2 personnel, but I really don't understand the 40% year over year for the custodial services. Why did that go up 40%?
We had the same cleaning contractor for the last 10 years, like 12 years. So they have begun to not perform as well as we would like. And they actually took a pay reduction during the recession, which we think could have contributed to the reduce in service. Again, this is Dennis reaching out to other municipalities and his experience at the university level with cleaning contractors, knowing what the service level that our departments would like and what the cost of that service would be an increase of 40% to what we're expending now.
Okay, all right.
Mayor, I'd just like to add, most specifically, I would say, the community center and the library are dissatisfied with the service.
In what way?
Well, if you want to speak, feel free.
Sure.
Kathy?
Well, to be blunt, we discovered that the cleaning staff was reusing the same rags. They used the same rag to clean the staff room that they used to clean the bathroom and did not throw that away. If you would like to come over and write messages to anyone you like in the dust, I invite you to do that. It's a very, I feel, unclean, and it's our house. It's the city's house to welcome the community in. It is not a clean house right now. The response time for a lot of maintenance tasks, not maintenance, excuse me, cleaning tasks is poor. They just don't do a good job.
And this is a yearly contract, and we've had them for how many years?
For at least 12. My understanding, it's been renewed several times without being put back out to bid.
Are we going to include them in the bid process here, or just look at 3 or 4 others?
They would be able to bid on the project if they so desired. It's an open bid.
Okay.
When is the bid open?
Contract end?
When the contract ends?
Contract ends June 30th.
Okay.
We're currently working with procurement to get that on the street.
Okay, thank you. And then the trolley, it's always a interesting topic. So this trolley the second trolley we have coming, you said it was newer, but still not new. And I just want to make sure we're not getting, some of the other trolleys were kind of, not to say broken down, but they're kind of,
Sure. No, I apologize if I misrepresented it. The image of the trolley, this would be a brand new trolley.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so we'd be keeping the second trolley.
No, we would be giving that one back.
Okay.
Yes.
So we get one new trolley
One
and
new
keeping
trolley.
2 buses for the other.
3 buses total.
Okay.
Yes.
3 new buses.
Correct.
All brand new.
That is correct.
Excellent. Okay. Something different than before. That's it.
Councilman Holder?
Thank you, everyone, for all the work. For those that are watching, this gives a highlight, but we did have a thick binder that we got to read. It was great reading pleasure over the weekend, and a lot of great detail in here. Really appreciate it. On the fire side, that volunteer aspect, of course, is such an asset to us, right, budget-wise. How are we doing in terms of getting volunteers to volunteer?
Well, I don't want to jinx us, but we're doing pretty good. The fire service in general across the country, career and volunteer, is having difficulty attracting young people to do that kind of work. And we have been very fortunate. Last year, Pete, I think we had, 18 new members? Yes. This year, I think it was 17. So we've been attracting people. Now, there's also some attrition, too. But so, knock on wood, we've been doing pretty good with getting volunteers. Matter of fact, I've got another application on my desk today for a person that wants to join. So overall, we're doing pretty good. Like I said, we're authorized for 180. I think we're at 163 right now, so we're always looking for a few more. We're authorized for 30 per station, 6 stations. So overall, we're doing pretty good, and a lot of departments are just hurting, and they can't. And most departments, if they're not career, they're what's called paid on call. So they pay their volunteers, per call and time for training. Whereas we don't do that, and we're still getting volunteers. So we're very fortunate.
PSA for it being, it also looks like it's a lot of fun for each station family that comes together.
You hate to say it, but I mean, it is fun, but it's very rewarding. People like serving the community. What makes us unique is that we've got the community serving the community. People from the community are volunteering, and it's challenging, it's rewarding, it's fun, and again, we're looking for a few more.
Well, anything we need to do to help keep nurturing that environment that entices folks, it sounds like you've got it going on, but that's something that needs to be obviously a priority for us, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, and how many fire hydrants are there?
6,001. But who's counting?
6,001 maintained every single year.
That's correct.
Wow, all right. Okay, I'm done abusing you. On the police side, personnel is a big part of that budget, obviously, and hiring was a few years ago. Catching up with the attrition and making sure we were hiring and keeping pace was a challenge. How is that going?
It's been going very well. Captain Gordon works on that. It's one of his main projects is hiring not only police officers but our civilian staff. So where are we at now with our?
We're authorized 109. We have 106 on staff. 107 will be starting May 14th, and we're still searching for number 108, 109.
Okay.
Real close.
Good, good. And attracting talent is?
We are. We're having a good run.
Good, good, good,
We have 2 in the police academy now.
Correct.
Awesome. All right. That was a challenge just not very long ago, so congratulations on that. Yes. That custodial was my question too, like what? The millage cap, it's kind of something I think that all of us in this room understand that is a monkey on our back, if you will, as we budget. And the protection of our bond rating and the value, what an asset that is to the community. I don't know if we want to get into it tonight, or maybe a brief overview of that on Thursday would be good, because that becomes a huge challenge for us. As you talked about Headley and Prop A, and then our millage cap, and our bond rating, what we can use, how we can use our funds. I think we take for granted that we all understand that. We've had questions about this. I think there's value in revisiting that as a team. We have a new council member, and just being mindful so that it's front of mind that that's something that, you know, you all really work hard to manage. Especially a few years back, we had the bond rating analyst that came in. I don't think he was specifically an analyst, but he understood.
He's a consultant.
A consultant that gave us advice, maybe some high points of that advice that came to us might be worthwhile for an overall context discussion, and everybody's eyes will glaze over. But it's an important thing, I think, for us to revisit and understand if everybody agrees.
Very important.
Consensus?
Sure.
Okay. The Headley override challenge to communities and the loss of state revenue sharing, you know, we've been able to manage and weather that, but a lot of communities in the state have really suffered from that. I'm trying to keep track of what Lansing's trying to come up with a revision, right, or a correction, or, you know. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's not as if folks aren't aware of what a challenge and how this handcuffs communities, but we can't seem to get it fixed, right?
No, because it's a legislative issue. There's been multiple school districts and several smaller communities that have had Headley overrides. Your school district overrides the 18 mills all the time because it does get affected by Headley. They get down there in the 17s, you have an override, and everyone generally says yes to the school because nothing's too good for the kids. The problem becomes, it's a perceptual problem that you have. Oh my God, you've got $6 billion in taxable value. What are you doing with all that money? And the public just doesn't understand that while the taxable value, Tom made a great analogy there. You had a 2.1% CPI this year. You came out with a 1.7% increase in revenue. It just needs to get out there. As far as the revenue sharing, the state's hands are relatively tied. Their revenue is limited also. It's starting to come back because the jobs are coming back, you know, and so that's some of the money that they can give to us, sales tax they can give back. People need to spend money for the state to have money to give back because the state had no money for the longest amount of time. The other thing is, what do they do with the money? They have that problem that you have where you decide between operating and capital. The roads in the state are a mess. Where are they going to put the money? They're going to put it into capital. They're not going to put it into operating. So again, they adjust that formula, the legislative formula, cut your revenue sharing back, spend it where they need to spend it. So, you know, it's kind of a circular issue right now. You need a change of philosophy is what needs to be.
But we don't see that coming in the short term, obviously.
Not in the length of my career here anymore.
And how long is that?
4 years.
And we really get walloped by that when the recessions hit, and we try to be pretty conservative as we budget accordingly, correct?
Absolutely, we are conservative in our practices, and it's worked well for us in the past. It's a legacy of, conservative budgeting practices. Getting back to your issue, we can double check. I haven't seen anything, in the legislative side of any House bills or Senate bills out there that are proposing to make any corrections to our current system, but we can double check it. If we come across something, we'll bring it back.
I'm not suggesting it changes, what you have here, but
I haven't seen anything lately.
It's those big picture things to be thinking of, and just that affirmation generally that we're being as conservative as we can, because it serves us well when we are. We've been a very blessed community to weather some tough storms in spite of all those dynamics. So.
Just a couple questions, and then we'll revisit any more questions. Can I just ask a couple questions about Medigo? I get a little concerned when 633 seniors can't get on a bus, and one of the reasons that I'm a proponent of the trolley and the shuttle is to provide service to our citizens and people that visit the city. Will the $50,000 make sure that 633 don't get stranded again this next year, because I am not opposed to giving more money to a program like that if there's a need for it.
I did talk to Kurt a little bit about sharing the buses from the Charlie program. However, for as much time as they're in the maintenance garage, it would not be good customer service to have him commit a bus in the morning. We schedule all these seniors for, you know, could be life-saving appointments, and then the bus is in the garage. So from what Medico is telling me, that should help offset those, you know, denials of ridership. However, sometimes some of those numbers, and it's not the majority, but some people wait till like the day before to call. So when they knew 2 weeks ago they could call. So some of that is on the person. They know they need to call ahead of time, especially now that they are, you know, getting the information that we're having a hard time accommodating everybody that calls. So, but the medical people said that would, you know.
That should do it?
Yeah.
Mayor, I would just think we'll ask them the question again to be 100% certain.
Yeah, I think that's a group of our residents that is growing each year, and I think it's the people that probably need assistance more than anybody. So I think we should provide that service and not make sure somebody gets stranded because they can't get that service. Which is my.
I can double check with Gary and get back to you.
Thanks. Thank you. Councilman Baker took a little of my thunder with the trails and pathways, but I thought there was a good understanding that there was going to be some extra funding, and we were going to connect phase 1 to the museum, and you know, I think it's important that we make sure that happens. You know, I don't ever want to hear somebody say again, it's the trail that goes nowhere. I just want to make sure that phase 1 connects to the museum, that it goes somewhere. And I think it would be a great point for people to get on that path and be able to go to the museum. So I just want to make sure, I thought that was pretty clear, that there was going to be extra funding available and that we were going to connect. So if I could just get clarification from that.
Sure. It will connect to the museum. It is part, when we made that commitment, it became part of phase 1. Okay. So in order to make that connection, we have to have what's called a mid-block crossing or refuge island there where the trail comes out to Waddles. Right. Our in-house staff is planning to do that. It is designed, it is ready to go, and that'll transfer them to the north side of Waddles, and then we have 8-foot walk all the way up to the museum property. So okay. It is part of phase 1.
Okay.
Mayor? Well, I think the question that Kurt was really answering is, once we get done with the project, if there is unspent funds, we could work with Tom to carry that over into the...
Yeah, at the end of 2018, just to make sure, in addition to the $750,000 that was budgeted for 2018, which takes us to June 30th, we budgeted another $750,000 for 2019 to continue that project on.
Good. I think it's important that we stay aggressive with that project. And then just my little... you know, at the last council meeting, we had a gentleman come up and talk about the flooding in the dog park. Yeah. And, you know, when I see these numbers and I see all of these people and their expectations in the spring and the summer for the dog park, the last thing I want to see happen is them walk into a mud bowl. And I've been going up and down Livernois, and it's a mud bowl. Mr. Miller?
Mayor, Kurt Bowensee, we did talk. He is working on a way to resolve that, and we were going to come back with a report in the future.
I think we need to make this a nice-looking dog park. Because those were impressive numbers, I thought.
Yeah.
Councilman Hamilton, you have a question?
Yeah, just a few follow-ups. Kind of a dumb question, but do we provide Medigo free, or do we charge? Do we get revenue from it?
There's, they ask for a $2 donation from each rider.
Okay.
So some of their costs are offset by that.
Okay, what % are offset? Do you know?
Maybe Tom can.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, Medigo is a nonprofit entity.
Right,
So none of
right.
the funds are city funds. We're helping that nonprofit by contributing
Right,
$50,000 for
Okay.
them to provide the service.
I got you. Okay.
So it's their operations.
Oh, okay, so we're just giving it over, and that's.
Well, we are, again, giving a contribution for, in
Yeah,
return
yeah.
for servicing our seniors.
Besides this will raise it to $100,000 a year in actual general fund dollars.
Correct.
We also dedicate SMART credits to them. And those dollars from SMART are specifically for what they call the specialized service to help elderly persons and persons with disability in transporting to appointments and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So they're providing a service that, through the nonprofit, so that we don't have to do it. Other communities might actually do the service themselves. Because the SMART funding is dedicated to do that only.
Great. So to make sure we understand, right, we are allocated funding from the SMART, right? We're part of the SMART community, SMART bus, right? So they give us back, what's about $180,000 a year? That comes back to the city, from SMART to the city. We in turn pass it on to Medigo, right? In addition to that $180,000, we've also budgeted now an additional $100,000. So for a total of about $280,000 that we're that we're being partners with Medigo in.
I was just curious.
It does cost a writer $2.
Yeah, I was just curious if it's free or not. I wasn't fully familiar. I'm on board with you. Let's get those 600 people and make sure that doesn't happen.
Councilman Pennington.
I've got a quick question for the water department. In the report here, it says that our lead levels are less than 2 parts per billion, and a call for action is 15 parts per billion. Just curious, how often is that checked? Is that a once a year? And is that something that we do, or do we rely on MDEQ to do their
Actually,
own
we
check?
do the testing, and you're required to do it every 3 years, as long as you're under the action level. And when it shows that, the reason it says 2 parts per billion is anything under that is undetectable, which that's where we're at 0.
Oh, okay.
They are talking about lowering that across the state, which really won't affect us here in Troy, but some other communities it could affect in a very huge way. But yeah, we're at 0. We, because we tested 0, we do not have to test. We tested this year. We do not, or I should say 2017, we will not have to test again for 3 years.
So Paul, is that tested where incoming, or is it tested somewhere in
No, actually, you have to kind of take a demographic survey of your residents and businesses, and you have to pick the locations that would be the most susceptible to a lead, like an older house, things like that. This is the only testing that any municipality has to do that requires the assistance of a resident. Everything else we do on our own. We have to actually drop these bottles off at a resident. They do the testing first thing in the morning before they use any water, and then we have to go back and pick them up. And we're in very good shape there.
Great. I just saw that 2 parts per billion, so I just figured that question. It's just nice to know that we're at 0.
Yeah. I've been in that program with the city for 25 years. They test my house every 3 years. It's pretty simple.
Great, thank you.
I was going to say something.
While we have you in the spotlight, I was surprised to see copper as a spec on water, when most of our home, the newer homes, right, are copper pipes. Does that leach into your?
Copper is just kind of like lead in the way that if you have water that's not treated correctly, and you have very high acidic water, any metal, and there's problems with plastic also. But you just have to make sure that the water is treated, which Great Lakes Water Authority does a fantastic job making sure that water pH is neutral. If you have a neutral pH water, none of these metals really get affected. It's once you get into that corrosive level of water, which is what happened in Flint, then you have any metal will leach in some way.
Okay. A follow-up, not to that, but on the building maintenance, we have 52 buildings that we that we clean? Did I hear that number?
Yes.
No, I don't think it's only 52.
Okay, we have 52 buildings, but, so they're not all cleaned under that contract?
No, the major facilities would be the fire stations, the training center, city hall, community center, Department of Public Works, library. The cleaning company does not clean like park restrooms.
Pumping stations.
Yeah, the radio towers, yeah, those 52 facilities is not necessarily, it could be a storage house that we own on Lang Street. We're not cleaning that building.
So that one contract covers all the buildings that you just mentioned that get cleaned? Is it one company that handles all those cleaning?
One contract, 3 different companies. Yeah, so it was subdivided up into 3 different companies, but essentially it was one contract that was put out to bid with different subcategories within the contract.
Okay, yeah, that was my thought. How do you find a company that's big enough to handle all that cleaning? But if it's split up into 3 different companies, so 3 companies then participate in that bid?
So currently, that's the way it is. We have 3 companies that are in the bid. There are larger companies out there that will be a sole source, one company, they'll do all the properties. Like Oakland County uses one company who cleans all of their county buildings.
Okay. So when we go out to bid, the bid will be to find 3 companies?
No.
Okay.
One company to clean our buildings.
One company to clean the buildings, okay.
Any questions from council?
Hate to reiterate, but I think that one company that's using the one rag for cleaning everything, it should be eliminated from the bidding process. I mean, at least for, until the clean up their act. I don't think we should include them in the bidding process until they get more than one rag. My opinion. Probably the libraries too.
A spec in the bid process.
Yes.
How many rags do you own?
I think we can talk about that when the bid comes up. Mr. Miller, that is a good presentation. I think it's always reflective that how many questions you have reflects how good the program was. So good job. Thanks to the staff for being here tonight. Next on the agenda is public comment. We didn't receive any cards indicating anyone wanted to speak, but if you do, please raise your hand. Thank you. Once again, thank you to all, especially staff, for being here and for all the hard work that you did putting together this portion of the budget. We're adjourned. We'll see you Thursday.